Hashtag the hook that changes everything in the darkest corners of modern warfare. Legends are born not in boardrooms or medal ceremonies, but in split seconds where life and death hang on the edge of a trigger pull. This is the story of Sarah Chun, a woman whose deadly precision remained hidden behind a carefully constructed facade until one October morning in Afghanistan changed everything. When Navy SEALs discovered that their quiet communications specialist had single-handedly eliminated 10 enemy combatants in 18 minutes using nothing but a borrowed rifle and her grandmother's breathing techniques, they realized they had been sharing meals and missions with one of the most lethal marksmen in military history. But Sarah's journey to that moment began years before, in a place where the sound of gunfire meant survival, not war. What you're about to read challenges everything you think you know about heroes, identity, and the price of keeping deadly secrets. This isn't just a story about military prowess. It's about a woman who learned that sometimes the greatest weapon isn't the one you carry, but the one nobody knows you have. Sarah Chun had learned to be invisible long before she ever wore a military uniform. Growing up in rural Montana, she was the quiet daughter of a Chinese immigrant mother and a third-generation rancher father who believed children should be seen and not heard. Her childhood was painted in muted colors of endless chores, strict discipline, and the constant pressure to prove herself worthy of the Chun name in a community where being different meant being scrutinized. The shooting started when Sarah was 8 years old. Her grandmother, Mei Chun, had arrived from Taiwan carrying nothing but a worn leather suitcase and stories that made Sarah's mother weep in the kitchen late at night. Mei spoke broken English, but communicated perfectly through actions, and one of those actions was teaching Sarah how to hold a rifle properly. The old woman had been a resistance fighter during World War II, something the family never discussed openly, but everyone understood through whispered conversations and the way Mei's eyes would grow distant when planes flew overhead. She saw something in Sarah that others missed. A steadiness that went beyond her years, a natural ability to control her breathing and heartbeat even when the world around her felt chaotic. Their first lesson took place behind the barn on a crisp September morning. Mei had convinced Sarah's father to let them practice target shooting with his old hunting rifle, claiming it was important for ranch safety. What began as plinking at tin cans evolved into something much more sophisticated as Mei shared techniques that had kept her alive in occupied Taiwan. Sarah learned to read wind patterns by watching grass movements, to calculate distance using her thumb and index finger, and, most importantly, to find the space between heartbeats where perfect stillness lived. Mei never explained where she had learned these skills, but Sarah absorbed every lesson like a thirsty plant soaking up rain. School was a different battlefield altogether. Sarah excelled academically but struggled socially, finding herself caught between worlds. Too Asian for some classmates, too American for others, too quiet for the popular crowds, and too serious for the rebels. She discovered that being unremarkable was a form of protection, allowing her to observe without being observed, to understand the patterns of human behavior that would later serve her in ways she couldn't imagine. Her teachers saw a dedicated student who turned in perfect assignments and never caused trouble. Her classmates saw a girl who might help with homework, but wasn't worth inviting to parties. Her parents saw a daughter who would bring honor to the family through academic achievement. None of them saw the transformation happening every weekend behind the barn, where Sarah was becoming something extraordinary. By age 12, Sarah could hit a target the size of a quarter from 300 yards using iron sights. Mei had introduced breathing techniques borrowed from meditation practices, teaching Sarah to slow her heart rate and enter an almost trance-like state of focus. The old woman would sit beside her granddaughter for hours, sharing stories about patience, precision, and the terrible responsibility that came with the ability to take a life from a distance. These weren't conversations about hunting deer or protecting livestock. Mei spoke about the weight of decisions made in milliseconds, about understanding the difference between killing and murder, about the burden of carrying deadly skills in a peaceful world. She never encouraged Sarah to pursue military service, but she prepared her for a reality where such skills might become necessary. High school brought new challenges as Sarah's academic excellence earned her opportunities her family had never imagined. college recruiters visited their modest ranch house, offering scholarships to prestigious universities. Sarah found herself torn between expectations, her parents' dreams of medical school, her own interest in engineering, and a growing awareness that she possessed abilities that set her apart from everyone around her. The shooting competition started during her junior year. Her father, proud of his daughter's marksmanship, but unaware of its true extent, encouraged her to join the school's newly formed precision shooting team. Sarah reluctantly agreed, knowing she would need to carefully control her performance to avoid unwanted attention. She won every competition by margins small enough to seem like lucky days rather than supernatural skill. Her teammates celebrated her victories while coaches scratched their heads at her unconventional techniques. The decision came during a conversation with May on a cold February evening. The old woman, now in her 80s, had grown frail, but her mind remained sharp. They sat in the kitchen drinking tea while snow fell outside, and May asked the question that changed everything. "What will you do with the gift I have given you?" Sarah had no answer. She had spent so many years perfecting skills she hoped never to use that she had never considered what purpose they might serve. May nodded as if the silence itself was an answer. Gifts and used become burdens. Skills hidden become secrets. Secrets become shame. You must choose who you will be, but remember that choosing to be ordinary when you are extraordinary is also a choice. The conversation haunted Sarah through her final months of high school. She watched her classmates make plans based on dreams and expectations, while she grappled with abilities that felt more like destiny than choice. The military option remained on the table, offering a path that might honor both her grandmother's training and her family's hopes for her future. Her mother worried about the dangers of military service. Her father expressed pride mixed with concern about his daughter serving in what he still considered a man's world. May said nothing more about the decision, but continued their training sessions with increased intensity, as if she knew something was coming. The final shooting lesson took place on a spring morning 3 weeks before graduation. May had Sarah practice at distances and under conditions that pushed every skill to its limit. Wind gusts, poor lighting, targets that moved unpredictably. Challenges that went far beyond anything required for hunting or sport shooting. As Sarah consistently hit targets that should have been impossible, basic training at Fort Benning proved to be an unexpected challenge, not because of the physical demands or mental pressure, but because Sarah had to consciously suppress abilities that came as naturally as breathing. While other recruits struggled with marksmanship fundamentals, Sarah found herself deliberately missing targets to avoid standing out among the crowd of aspiring soldiers. Drill Sergeant Martinez noticed her first. During the second week of weapons training, he watched Sarah consistently place shots in a tight grouping just outside the center ring. Good enough to pass qualifications, but not remarkable enough to draw attention from higher command. What caught his eye wasn't her accuracy, but the unnatural steadiness of her shooting stance, and the way she controlled her breathing like someone with years of advanced training. After the range session, Martinez pulled Sarah aside behind the equipment shed where other recruits couldn't hear their conversation. His weathered face carried the suspicious expression of someone who had seen too many recruits trying to hide their true capabilities for various reasons. "Where did you learn to shoot, Chun?" Sarah had prepared for this question during her long bus ride to Georgia. "My father taught me for ranch work back in Montana, Drill Sergeant. Hunting and pest control mostly." Martinez studied her with the intensity that came from 2 decades of reading people in high-stress situations. "Ranch work doesn't teach the kind of breathing control you showed out there. And it sure as hell doesn't teach someone to group shots like that while pretending to struggle with the fundamentals." The moment stretched between them while Sarah calculated her response. She could continue the deception, claim natural talent, or reveal enough truth to satisfy his curiosity without exposing the full extent of her abilities. She chose a middle path that would become her standard approach throughout military service. "My grandmother was very serious about proper technique, Drill Sergeant. She made me practice until everything became automatic. Maybe I learned some habits that look more advanced than they actually are." It was true enough to pass scrutiny while remaining vague about the source and extent of her training. Martinez seemed to accept the explanation, but Sarah noticed him watching her more carefully during subsequent exercises. She realized she had gained both an ally and a potential threat, someone who suspected there was more to her story but wasn't yet ready to dig deeper. The remainder of basic training required a delicate balance between competence and concealment. Sarah excelled in communications training, physical fitness, and tactical exercises while carefully moderating her performance in weapons-related activities. She discovered that being exceptionally good at some things helped camouflage being merely good at others. Her fellow recruits saw her as someone to rely on for technical support and academic help. The communications equipment seemed to respond to her touch like she had an intuitive understanding of complex systems. Her study groups consistently scored higher on written exams, and she developed a reputation as someone who could explain complicated concepts in simple terms. These visible strengths provided perfect cover for the abilities she kept hidden. When classmates asked about her shooting background, she would redirect conversations toward discussions of radio protocols or equipment maintenance. She learned that people were generally more interested in skills that could help them than in abilities that might make them feel inadequate. Advanced individual training in communications proved more challenging as the technical demands increased and the social dynamics shifted. Sarah found herself assigned to a specialized program that trained operators for deployment with special operations units. The selection criteria included psychological evaluations, advanced security clearance investigations, and performance assessments that probed deeper than basic training had allowed. Dr. Amanda Foster, the program's psychological evaluator, proved to be far more perceptive than Drill Sergeant Martinez. During their third session, she asked questions that seemed casual but clearly targeted specific aspects of Sarah's background and personality. Tell me about your relationship with your grandmother. Sarah had grown comfortable discussing May in general terms, but Dr. Foster's follow-up questions probed areas that made her increasingly uncomfortable. The psychologist asked about specific conversations, family dynamics during May's visits, and changes in Sarah's behavior or interests that coincided with her grandmother's influence. Your grandmother's immigration records show she arrived in the United States under refugee status following World War II. There are some gaps in her documented history during the war years. Did she ever discuss her experiences during that time? The question felt like walking into a trap. Sarah knew that military intelligence had access to records she couldn't imagine, and that lying during a security clearance investigation could end her career before it began. She also knew that revealing too much about May's resistance activities might raise questions about the nature of her training. She sometimes mentioned difficult times during the war, but mostly she focused on building a new life in America. She was proud of surviving and starting over, but she didn't dwell on the past. Dr. Foster made notes while maintaining eye contact. The interesting thing about trauma survivors is how they pass along coping mechanisms to the next generation. Sometimes children and grandchildren develop skills or habits that seem disproportionate to their actual experiences. Have you noticed anything like that in yourself? Sarah felt the conversation sliding toward territory where honest answers would reveal too much, while dishonest ones might be detected by someone trained to recognize deception. She opted for a response that acknowledged the observation without confirming its implications. My grandmother believed in being prepared for difficult situations. She taught me to stay calm under pressure and pay attention to details that other people might miss. I think those lessons have helped me in military training, but I wouldn't call them unusual. The sessions continued for 2 more weeks, each one probing different aspects of Sarah's background, personality, and motivations. Dr. Foster asked about her decision to join the military, her long-term career goals, and her comfort level with potentially dangerous assignments. The questions felt like someone assembling a puzzle with pieces Sarah couldn't see. The breakthrough came during weapons recertification at the end of advanced training. Sarah had spent months carefully moderating her performance, but the qualification standards for special operations support personnel were significantly higher than basic training requirements. She found herself in a position where shooting poorly enough to hide her abilities would result in failing the program entirely. The range officer was a former Marine sniper named Sergeant First Class Williams who approached marksmanship training with the intensity of someone whose life had depended on precision shooting. He watched each trainee carefully, offering technical corrections and pushing performance standards beyond minimum requirements. Sarah's first attempt at the qualification course resulted in a score that met standards, but didn't demonstrate the competency Williams expected from someone assigned to work with special operations teams. He called her back for additional instruction, determined to help her reach what he assumed was her potential. "Chun, you're holding back for some reason. I can see it in your stance, your breathing, even the way you approach the firing line. What's got you spooked?" Sarah faced the same dilemma she had encountered with Drill Sergeant Martinez, but with higher stakes. Failing to improve would mean reassignment to a standard communications role, effectively ending her chance to work in special operations. Improving too dramatically would raise questions about her background and potentially expose abilities she had worked to conceal. She decided to reveal enough skill to pass qualification while maintaining the fiction that she was simply overcoming nervousness and inexperience. Over the course of 3 additional sessions, she gradually increased her performance, allowing Williams to take credit for dramatic improvements that she attributed to his excellent instruction. The strategy worked better than expected. Williams became her advocate, praising her dedication and rapid learning to other instructors. Her scores improved in a pattern that looked like natural progression under expert guidance rather than the revelation of pre-existing abilities. By graduation, Sarah had achieved her goal of qualifying for special operations support while maintaining her cover as someone with natural talent who had benefited from excellent training. Her orders assigned her to a communications role with a SEAL team based out of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, exactly the posting she had hoped for. The assignment represented both an opportunity and a significant risk. Working with Navy SEALs would provide access to advanced training, challenging missions, and the chance to serve alongside some of the military's most elite operators. It would also place her under constant observation by individuals whose survival depended on accurately assessing the capabilities of everyone around them. During her final week at Fort Benning, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. May had traveled from Montana, her first airplane trip since arriving in America decades earlier. The old woman looked frail but determined as they sat together in a small cafe near the base. "I wanted to see where you were going before you go there." They talked for hours about Sarah's training, her upcoming assignment, and the challenges she might face. May asked detailed questions about the selection process, the psychological evaluations, and the people who would be making decisions about Sarah's future. Her questions demonstrated an understanding of military culture that went far beyond what Sarah had expected. As their visit ended, May gave Sarah a small leather pouch containing what appeared to be traditional Chinese coins and a piece of jade. "These belonged to my grandfather, who taught me many things I later taught you. Keep them close when the time comes to use what you have learned." Sarah wanted to ask what her grandmother meant by "when the time comes," but May's expression suggested that some questions were better left unspoken. They embraced at the airport, both understanding that this might be their final meeting but neither wanting to acknowledge that possibility. Naval Amphibious Base Coronado hit Sarah like stepping into a different universe where normal human limitations seemed negotiable. The SEALs she observed during her first week moved with a confidence that came from pushing their bodies and minds beyond what most people considered possible. They spoke in abbreviated conversations that conveyed complex tactical concepts, maintained equipment with obsessive precision, and approached training exercises with deadly seriousness that made her previous military experience feel like summer camp. Team 7 welcomed their new communications specialist with the polite distance that special operations personnel maintained toward support staff. They needed her skills to coordinate complex missions, but she wasn't part of the brotherhood forged through SEAL training and combat experience. Sarah understood the dynamic and accepted it, knowing that earning their respect would require proving herself through performance rather than trying to fit into social structures built around shared suffering. Lieutenant Commander Jack Morrison led Team 7 with the quiet authority of someone who had survived deployments that existed only in classified files. His team included 6 operators, each with specialized skills that complemented the others in ways that seemed almost telepathic after years of working together. They had requested a communications specialist with advanced technical training and security clearance for intelligence operations, making Sarah's assignment both prestigious and isolating. Her first month involved intensive training on communication systems she hadn't encountered during previous assignments. The equipment was more advanced, the protocols more complex, and the stakes significantly higher than anything she had experienced. Sarah discovered that special operations communications required not just technical competency, but tactical awareness that allowed operators to maintain contact under conditions that would shut down conventional military communications. Petty Officer First Class Miguel Rodriguez became her unofficial mentor in the practical aspects of working with SEALs. A communications veteran with 12 years of special operations experience, Rodriguez had seen dozens of support personnel cycle through assignments with varying degrees of success. He took Sarah under his wing partly out of professional duty and partly because he recognized something in her approach that suggested she might actually survive the demands of the job. The thing about working with these guys, Rodriguez explained during a late-night equipment maintenance session, is that they don't care about your rank, your background, or your feelings. They care about whether you can do your job when everything goes wrong and people are shooting at you. Prove that, and they'll treat you like family. Fail at it, and they'll request your transfer so fast you'll think you imagined this assignment. Sarah absorbed the lesson while carefully maintaining her facade as someone learning specialized skills rather than someone adapting existing knowledge to new equipment. She asked questions that demonstrated technical competency without revealing the depth of her understanding, contributed to training exercises in ways that helped the team without showcasing abilities that might raise unwanted questions. The psychological challenge proved more difficult than the technical demands. Living among individuals whose capabilities far exceeded normal human standards forced Sarah to constantly evaluate her own abilities and question the wisdom of keeping them hidden. She watched SEALs perform feats of endurance, strength, and mental toughness that most people would consider impossible, all while knowing she possessed skills that might complement their abilities in ways they couldn't imagine. Chief Petty Officer David Kim noticed her internal struggle during their third week of training together. Kim served as the team's senior enlisted advisor and possessed the interpersonal awareness that came from managing high-performing individuals under extreme stress. After a particularly challenging communication exercise, he approached Sarah with questions that felt more personal than professional. "You're holding something back, Chun. I can see it in how you approach problems, like you're solving them with one hand tied behind your back. What's got you playing small?" The observation hit closer to home than Sarah was comfortable acknowledging. She had spent so much effort appearing competent, but not exceptional, that she had developed habits of self-limitation that felt increasingly unnatural around people who pushed themselves to their absolute limits every day. "I'm still learning the systems, Chief. I don't want to overreach and make mistakes that could compromise operations." Kim studied her with the intensity that elite operators brought to threat assessment. There's a difference between being careful and being afraid to show what you can do. We need to know your actual capabilities, not what you think we want to see. The conversation stayed with Sarah as training intensity increased, and the team prepared for their upcoming deployment to Afghanistan. She realized that her careful concealment of abilities might actually endanger the people she was supposed to support. Special operations success depended on every team member performing at their maximum capability, and her self-imposed limitations could create gaps that put lives at risk. The deployment briefing took place in a secure conference room where Sarah learned details about their mission that existed only in classified channels. Team 7 was assigned to conduct intelligence gathering and direct action operations in a region of Afghanistan where conventional military presence was limited and enemy activity had increased dramatically over the previous 6 months. The briefing officer, a Navy intelligence specialist named Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, presented satellite imagery and intercepted communications that painted a picture of sophisticated enemy operations coordinated by individuals with advanced military training. The targets weren't typical insurgents, but professional soldiers who had received training from foreign military advisors and possessed equipment that rivaled American capabilities. "Intelligence suggests these aren't local fighters," Mitchell explained while displaying photographs of captured weapons and communication equipment. "We're looking at professional military operators who understand our tactics and have access to advanced technology. Your missions will require exceptional coordination and the ability to adapt when standard procedures prove inadequate. Sarah absorbed the briefing while calculating the implications for her own role. Working against professionally trained opponents would place unprecedented demands on every team member, including communications personnel who might find themselves in combat situations despite their support role. The mission parameters suggested that normal boundaries between operators and support staff might blur when survival was at stake. Team preparation intensified during their final month at Coronado as Morrison pushed everyone to their individual and collective limits. Sarah found herself participating in exercises that went far beyond communications training, including small unit tactics, emergency medical procedures, and weapons handling that approached the standards expected of operators rather than support personnel. The weapons training proved particularly challenging as Sarah struggled to demonstrate competency without revealing capabilities that would raise questions about her background. Morrison had requested advanced marksmanship instruction for all team members based on intelligence assessments that suggested long-range engagements might be necessary during their deployment. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Walsh, a Marine sniper instructor brought in specifically for the training, approached marksmanship with the methodical precision of someone who had spent years perfecting the science of long-range shooting. Sarah watched him work with other team members, noting techniques that paralleled what May had taught her while recognizing approaches that differed significantly from her grandmother's methods. When Walsh began working with Sarah individually, she faced her most challenging test of concealment yet. His training methods would quickly reveal either that she possessed advanced skills or that she had unusual natural ability that warranged further investigation. Either outcome threatened to expose abilities she had worked years to hide. "Let's start with basic position and breathing," Walsh said as he handed her an M4 rifle configured for precision shooting. "I want to establish your baseline before we work on advanced techniques." Sarah approached the firing line knowing that her next few minutes would determine whether she could maintain her cover while working with someone who possessed expertise that rivaled May's knowledge. She decided to demonstrate reasonable competency while claiming to struggle with concepts that felt as natural as walking. Her first shots grouped tightly enough to show potential while remaining inconsistent enough to suggest someone still learning fundamentals. Walsh made adjustments to her position and breathing that she pretended to find helpful, allowing him to take credit for improvements that came from deliberately poor initial performance. The strategy worked until Walsh introduced environmental factors that required the kind of advanced calculations Sarah had been making automatically since childhood. Wind speed, humidity, elevation changes, and target movement created variables that demanded either extensive training or natural ability that couldn't be easily explained. "Chun, you're compensating for environmental factors like someone with years of experience, but you're missing fundamentals that should be automatic by now. Where did you learn to read wind?" Sarah felt the conversation sliding toward territory that threatened to expose everything she had worked to conceal. She needed an explanation that would satisfy Walsh's curiosity without revealing the true source of her training or the extent of her abilities. "My father made me practice in all kinds of weather back home in Montana. He said if you couldn't hit what you were aiming at when conditions were difficult, you couldn't count on hitting it when it mattered. I guess I developed some habits without really understanding the theory behind them." Walsh accepted the explanation, but continued watching her performance with increased attention. Sarah realized she had reached a point where further concealment might actually hinder her ability to support the team effectively. She began allowing more of her natural ability to show while maintaining the fiction that she was simply a fast learner benefiting from excellent instruction. By the end of advanced training, Sarah had achieved a delicate balance between demonstrating competency and maintaining her cover. The team respected her technical skills, trusted her ability to maintain communications under pressure, and had begun including her in tactical discussions that went beyond her official role. Morrison pulled her aside during their final week of preparation to discuss expectations for the deployment. His conversation revealed awareness that special operations missions often required personnel to perform outside their designated roles, and that survival might depend on every team member's ability to adapt when circumstances demanded flexibility. "Chun, I want you to understand that once we're deployed, the lines Afghanistan hit Sarah like stepping into a landscape painted in shades of danger and desolation. The forward operating base where Team 7 was stationed existed as a small pocket of American technology and determination surrounded by mountains that had witnessed centuries of conflict. Sarah's first impression was of a place where nature itself seemed hostile to human presence, where the thin air and extreme temperatures created additional enemies beyond the human ones they had come to fight. The base housed multiple special operations teams conducting missions across a region where enemy forces had grown increasingly sophisticated over the past year. Intelligence reports described coordinated attacks that demonstrated advanced planning, professional military training, and access to equipment that rivaled American capabilities. Team 7's mission involved gathering intelligence on enemy leadership while conducting direct action operations designed to disrupt their growing influence. Sarah's living quarters consisted of a small prefabricated building shared with two other support personnel, a medical technician named Rachel Torres and an intelligence analyst named Lisa Park. The three women formed an unofficial support network in an environment dominated by male operators who maintained the casual camaraderie that came from shared experiences Sarah couldn't fully understand. Torres had deployed twice previously with special operations teams and possessed the weary competence of someone who had seen combat medical procedures performed under fire. Park was on her first deployment, but brought advanced analytical skills that helped teams understand enemy patterns and predict likely attack scenarios. Both women welcomed Sarah as someone who understood the challenges of supporting elite operators while maintaining their own professional standards. Their conversations during off-duty hours provided Sarah with insights into the realities of deployment that training hadn't prepared her to handle. Torres described the psychological pressure of maintaining life-saving medical skills while watching friends face dangers that could overwhelm any amount of preparation. Park talked about the responsibility of providing intelligence that could determine whether missions succeeded or resulted in casualties. "The thing that gets to you," Torres explained during one of their late-night discussions, "is knowing that everything we do matters more than it would anywhere else. A communication failure, a medical mistake, an intelligence error, any of those things can mean people die. The pressure never goes away." Sarah absorbed these conversations while grappling with her own understanding of how her concealed abilities might factor into life and death situations. She had spent years hiding skills that could potentially save lives, but revealing them would require explanations she wasn't prepared to provide. The moral complexity of her situation grew more challenging as she witnessed the dedication of people who held nothing back in service to their teammates. Team 7's first missions involved intelligence gathering operations that required Sarah to establish and maintain communications from concealed observation posts overlooking suspected enemy positions. The work demanded technical expertise, physical endurance, and the ability to remain motionless for hours while enemy patrols moved through areas close enough that she could hear conversations. Morrison positioned Sarah with different team members during these operations, allowing her to observe their individual approaches to small unit tactics and threat assessment. She noted that each operator brought specialized skills that complemented the others in ways that seemed almost supernatural when they worked together effectively. Petty Officer Second Class Marcus Johnson served as the team's demolitions expert and possessed an artist's touch with explosive devices. Sarah watched him construct improvised charges that could create precisely calculated effects while working under time pressure that would overwhelm most people. His movements during these procedures demonstrated the same focused concentration that May had taught her to achieve during shooting practice. Petty Officer First Class Anthony Martinez functioned as the team's medic and brought skills that bridged the gap between emergency first aid and advanced surgical procedures. Sarah observed him treating injuries during training exercises with techniques that seemed to combine textbook knowledge with intuitive understanding of human anatomy and psychology under stress. Chief Kim continued serving as the team's intelligence and reconnaissance specialist, demonstrating abilities to gather and analyze information that revealed enemy patterns invisible to less experienced observers. His work required patience, analytical thinking, and the kind of attention to detail that Sarah recognized from her own approach to complex problems. Lieutenant Junior Grade Michael Thompson operated as the team's communications liaison with higher command, but his role extended far beyond Sarah's technical responsibilities. Thompson possessed the political awareness necessary to navigate complex command relationships while ensuring that Team 7 received the support and resources necessary for mission success. Each team member's specialized capabilities impressed Sarah while reinforcing her awareness that she was working among individuals who represented the pinnacle of military professional development. Their willingness to trust her with increasingly sensitive responsibilities felt both honoring and burdensome as she continued concealing abilities that might enhance their collective effectiveness. The turning point came during their third week of operations when intelligence sources reported unusual enemy activity in a mountain region that had previously remained quiet. Intercepted communications suggested that a high-value target, someone with advanced military training and connections to foreign advisors, had established a command post in a location that offered excellent defensive advantages while remaining accessible to supply routes. Morrison briefed the team on a mission that would require them to conduct surveillance of the suspected command post while gathering intelligence on enemy capabilities and intentions. The operation would take place in mountainous terrain that limited helicopter support and required team members to carry additional equipment across distances that would test everyone's physical endurance. Sarah's role involved establishing a communication relay station that would allow the team to maintain contact with base support while operating at extended range in terrain that blocked normal radio communications. The assignment required her to position herself on a ridge overlooking the target area while the rest of the team maneuvered closer for detailed observation. The mission began before dawn as Team 7 moved through mountain passes that revealed Afghanistan's harsh beauty alongside its strategic challenges. Sarah carried communication equipment that weighed nearly 40 pounds in addition to her personal weapons and survival gear. The altitude made breathing difficult, while steep terrain demanded constant attention to footing that could determine the difference between mission success and catastrophic falls. After 6 hours of movement, Morrison positioned Sarah on a ridge that provided excellent sight lines to the suspected enemy position while offering concealment from observation by hostile forces. Her job involved monitoring radio traffic, maintaining contact with base operations, and providing early warning if enemy forces approached the team's position. The observation post consisted of a rocky outcropping that offered natural camouflage while providing stable positions for communication equipment. Sarah established her station with meticulous attention to details that would prevent detection while ensuring reliable signal transmission across the challenging terrain. As daylight revealed the landscape around her position, Sarah gained her first clear view of the suspected enemy command post. The facility appeared more sophisticated than intelligence reports had suggested, with defensive positions that demonstrated professional military engineering and communication antennas that indicated advanced electronic capabilities. Her elevated position also revealed something that aerial reconnaissance had missed. The enemy facility was surrounded by observation posts positioned at strategic locations throughout the surrounding mountains. Sarah counted at least 8 positions that appeared to be manned by individuals with military training and equipment that included advanced optical devices for long-range surveillance. The discovery changed the mission parameters significantly. Team 7 was approaching what appeared to be a well-defended facility surrounded by professional security that could detect and engage American forces before they reached positions suitable for detailed intelligence gathering. Sarah realized she needed to warn Morrison about the threat before his team moved into positions where they would be vulnerable to coordinated enemy action. Her radio call to Morrison resulted in the team taking concealed positions while reassessing their approach based on her observations. Morrison requested detailed information about enemy positions, capabilities, and likely response patterns that would help him develop alternative tactics for accomplishing the mission objectives. Sarah found herself providing tactical analysis that went far beyond her official communications role. Her elevated position offered perspectives on enemy defensive arrangements that allowed her to identify weaknesses and suggest approaches that might allow Team 7 to accomplish their objectives while avoiding detection by the surrounding observation posts. The conversation revealed capabilities that surprised Morrison and forced Sarah to explain knowledge that seemed disproportionate to her training and experience. When he asked how she had developed the ability to analyze defensive positions with the precision of someone with advanced tactical training, she found herself providing explanations that stretched the truth without revealing her grandmother's influence. I spent a lot of time hunting in mountain terrain back home, sir. Reading landscape and understanding sight lines becomes automatic when you're trying to approach game animals that have better senses than humans do. I guess some of those skills transfer to tactical situations. Morrison accepted the explanation, but Sarah could hear increased interest in his voice as he asked for additional details about enemy positions and capabilities. She realized that her elevated position and analytical abilities had made her an essential part of the mission in ways that went far beyond technical communications support. As the day progressed, Sarah's role evolved from passive communications relay to active intelligence gathering as she used optical equipment to observe enemy activities and report details that helped Team 7 understand the facility's purpose and importance. Her observations revealed that the site housed sophisticated communication equipment, hosted meetings between individuals who appeared to be senior military leaders, and served as a coordination point for activities throughout the region. The intelligence value of her observations justified extending the mission, but it also increased the risk to Team 7 as they remained in positions where discovery could result in engagement with superior enemy forces. Morrison made the decision to continue surveillance while requesting additional support from base operations that could provide backup if the situation deteriorated. Sarah's communication responsibilities expanded to include coordinating. The morning of October 15th began with routine communications checks that quickly evolved into something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. Sarah's monitoring equipment detected increased radio traffic indicating that enemy forces had not only discovered Team 7's presence, but were coordinating a response designed to capture or eliminate the American Special Operations Team. The intercepted communications revealed professional military coordination that included detailed knowledge of American tactics, equipment capabilities, and likely response patterns. The enemy forces weren't improvising a reaction to unexpected contact. They were executing a carefully planned operation designed to neutralize special operations teams using methods that suggested extensive training and experience fighting American forces. Morrison's voice came through Sarah's headset with the controlled urgency that elite operators used when situations deteriorated rapidly. Chun, we have multiple enemy units moving to surround our position. We need immediate extraction support and close air support if available. How copy? Sarah acknowledged the transmission while rapidly calculating response times and coordination requirements that would determine whether Team 7 could withdraw successfully or would be forced into a fighting retreat against superior numbers. Her analysis revealed a timeline that offered limited options, none of which guaranteed successful extraction without casualties. Sir, nearest air support is 18 minutes out. Extraction birds are 25 minutes minimum. Enemy forces will have you surrounded in approximately 15 minutes based on their current movement patterns. The mathematics of the situation were brutally simple. Team 7 faced professional military opponents who possessed superior numbers, intimate knowledge of the terrain, and the tactical advantage of operating from prepared positions. American support would arrive after the enemy had established positions that would make extraction extremely difficult and potentially catastrophic. Morrison's response revealed his understanding of the tactical reality they faced. Chun, we're going to need you to coordinate close air support when it arrives while maintaining communication with extraction assets. We're moving to fighting positions, and we'll attempt to delay enemy contact until support arrives. Sarah understood that Team 7's survival would depend on her ability to manage multiple communication channels while providing the kind of tactical coordination that usually required specialized training and experience she wasn't supposed to possess. The mission had evolved far beyond her official role, demanding capabilities that would test everything May had taught her while requiring split-second decisions that could determine whether her teammates survived. The enemy forces moving through the mountain terrain below demonstrated tactical coordination that confirmed intelligence assessments about their professional training and equipment capabilities. Sarah observed teams of 4 to 6 individuals moving with discipline and communication that revealed extensive military experience. Their approach patterns showed understanding of American tactics and counter-surveillance techniques that suggested they had received training specifically designed to combat Special Operations Forces. As Sarah coordinated with base operations to expedite air support, her elevated position provided tactical observations that could help Team 7 survive until assistance arrived. She could see enemy movement patterns that weren't visible from ground level, identify potential ambush positions, and track the development of coordinated attacks that Morrison needed to understand to plan effective defensive responses. Her radio traffic with Morrison evolved into tactical consultation that went far beyond communications support. Sir, enemy Team Alpha is approaching your southern flank using the ridge line for concealment. They'll be in assault position in approximately 8 minutes. Team Bravo is moving through the valley to your east, and we'll have you flanked in 10 minutes. Morrison's response indicated growing appreciation for intelligence that was allowing his team to adjust positions and prepare responses based on information they couldn't gather from their ground-level positions. Outstanding work, Chun. Continue tracking enemy movement and advise of any changes in their approach patterns. The complexity of managing multiple radio frequencies while maintaining tactical observation pushed Sarah to her absolute limits in ways that felt both familiar and terrifying. The concentration required reminded her of shooting sessions with May, but the stakes involved life and death decisions affecting people she had grown to care about deeply over their months of training and deployment. Enemy forces continued converging on Team 7's position with coordination that revealed sophisticated command and control capabilities. Sarah observed hand signals, radio communication, and movement patterns that demonstrated the kind of small-unit tactical proficiency that American forces had spent years developing. The enemy had clearly received training from individuals with intimate knowledge of special operations procedures and equipment. At 14 minutes into the developing engagement, Sarah's tactical observations revealed a critical vulnerability in the enemy's approach that could potentially be exploited to Team 7's advantage. One of the converging enemy teams had positioned itself in an exposed location that offered excellent concealment from Team 7's position, but left them vulnerable to observation and engagement from Sarah's elevated position on the ridge. The realization created a moral and tactical dilemma that demanded immediate resolution. Sarah possessed the skills necessary to engage enemy forces from her position, but doing so would reveal abilities that she had spent years concealing and fundamentally change her role from communications support to active combat participant. More critically, Team 7's survival might depend on her willingness to use capabilities they didn't know she possessed. Morrison's voice came through her headset with increasing urgency. Chun, enemy forces are closing rapidly. Air support ETA. For minutes, sir. But they'll be too late to prevent enemy contact. The silence that followed Morrison's acknowledgement told Sarah everything she needed to know about Team 7's situation. They were professional soldiers who understood tactical realities and accepted risks that came with special operations missions. But they also trusted her to provide whatever support was necessary for mission success and team survival. Sarah made the decision that would define the rest of her military career and potentially save the lives of 6 teammates who had become more important to her than maintaining secrets about her past. She reached for the M110 sniper rifle that Morrison had insisted she carry despite her official communications role, a weapon she had practiced with but never fired in combat. Sir, I have a shot on enemy Team Alpha from my position, requesting permission to engage. Morrison's response came after a pause that felt like an eternity. Chun, that's not your job. Maintain communications and prepare for extraction. Sarah understood his reluctance to authorize a communications specialist to engage enemy forces, but she also recognized that conventional role boundaries had become meaningless in their current situation. Team 7 needed every advantage available, and she possessed capabilities that could provide the edge necessary for survival. Sir, with respect, enemy Team Alpha will be in assault position in 3 minutes. I have a clear shot and the capability to take it. Your call. The pause that followed contained Morrison's rapid calculation of risks, resources, and tactical realities that special operations leaders made under extreme pressure. Sarah could hear gunfire beginning in the distance as Team 7 made contact with advancing enemy forces. The moment for theoretical discussions about roles and capabilities had passed. Chun, if you have the shot, take it. But understand that changes everything about your role going forward. Sarah acknowledged the transmission while shifting into the mental state that May had taught her to achieve when precision mattered more than anything else in the world. She controlled her breathing, slowed her heart rate, and began the calculations that would determine whether her first combat engagement would save her teammates or reveal her position to enemy forces capable of responding with overwhelming firepower. The first shot eliminated an enemy team leader at a distance of 847 meters, a precision engagement that immediately disrupted the coordinated assault developing against Team 7's southern flank. Sarah's elevated position and the suppressed rifle Morrison had insisted she carry allowed her to remain concealed while engaging targets that couldn't effectively respond to her fire. Her training with May had prepared her for the psychological impact of taking human lives, but the reality of combat shooting still required conscious mental adjustment as she transitioned from first target to second. The enemy forces were professional soldiers executing orders that threatened American lives, making the moral calculation clear even as the emotional impact demanded processing that would come later. The second and third shots eliminated enemy communications personnel and automatic weapons operators, degrading the attacking force's ability to coordinate responses while reducing their firepower advantage. Sarah's precision and rapid target acquisition created confusion among enemy forces who couldn't identify her position or understand how their tactical advantage had suddenly evaporated. By her sixth shot, enemy forces were attempting to locate her position while their coordinated assault dissolved into individual survival responses that allowed Team 7 to break contact and begin moving toward extraction positions. Sarah continued engaging targets of opportunity while maintaining communications with air support assets that were approaching the area with close air support capabilities. The remaining 4 shots eliminated enemy leaders and specialists whose roles were critical to maintaining organized resistance against American forces. Sarah's ability to distinguish high-value targets from regular soldiers demonstrated tactical awareness that went far beyond technical communications training, revealing analytical capabilities that complemented her precision shooting in ways that maximized the impact of each engagement. As air support arrived and began engaging enemy positions, Sarah maintained overwatch responsibilities while coordinating extraction for Team 7 from a position that had become untenable once enemy forces understood they were facing sniper fire from the ridgeline. Her final shots covered Team 7's withdrawal while air support suppressed remaining enemy resistance. The 18 minutes that began with routine communications monitoring had transformed Sarah from hidden support personnel to acknowledged special operations asset in ways that would reshape her military career and her relationship with capabilities she had spent years concealing. Team 7's successful extraction came at the cost of revealing skills that would demand explanations she wasn't prepared to provide. Morrison's voice came through her headset as extraction helicopters approached their rally point. Chun, that was the most impressive precision shooting I've witnessed in 15 years of special operations. We need to have a serious conversation about your background and capabilities when we get back to base. Sarah acknowledged the transmission while beginning to process the implications of revealing abilities that had remained hidden throughout her military career. The girl who had learned to shoot behind a Montana barn with her grandmother's patient instruction had become the woman who saved 6 Navy SEALs using skills that would now demand explanations about training she couldn't fully acknowledge and capabilities that might redefine her role within Special Operations Forces. As the extraction helicopter lifted off with Team 7 aboard, Sarah looked back at the mountain ridge where she had spent 18 minutes proving that some secrets are too important to maintain when teammates' lives hang in the balance. May's leather pouch remained in her pocket, a reminder that the skills passed down through generations sometimes demand public acknowledgement when private concealment becomes impossible to sustain. The flight back to base carried Team 7 toward conversations that would challenge everything they thought they understood about their communications specialist and force Sarah to explain how a ranch girl from Montana had developed the kind of precision shooting capabilities that rivaled the most advanced military training available to American forces. Sarah Chin's carefully maintained facade had shattered on a mountainside in Afghanistan, revealing abilities that would reshape her military career while honoring the memory of a grandmother who had prepared her granddaughter for moments when extraordinary skills become necessary for ordinary human survival. The 18 minutes that changed everything had proven that some gifts are too valuable to remain hidden when the people we care about need every advantage available to come home alive. Tie-in with air support, artillery units, and quick reaction forces that could respond if Team 7 required assistance. The complexity of managing multiple communication channels while continuing tactical observation pushed her technical skills to their limits while demanding the kind of multitasking ability that most people couldn't sustain under stress. As evening approached, enemy activity around the facility increased in ways that suggested preparation for significant operations. Sarah observed vehicles arriving with additional personnel, communication equipment being tested and calibrated, and defensive positions being reinforced with additional weapons and surveillance capabilities. Her reports to Morrison painted a picture of enemy forces preparing for major operations that could threaten American forces throughout the region. The intelligence value of their observations had grown beyond anything anticipated during mission planning, but so had the risk of detection and the potential consequences of enemy discovery. The situation was about to become even more complex as Sarah's communications equipment detected radio transmissions indicating that enemy forces had become aware of American presence in the area. The professional military unit they were observing had capabilities that included signals intelligence and the ability to coordinate responses that could overwhelm a single special operations team. Sarah found herself in possession of information that could prevent American casualties while serving in a role that had suddenly become far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The girl who had learned to shoot behind a Montana barn was about to face 18 minutes that would test every skill May had taught her while revealing abilities that would change how Team 7 understood their communications specialist forever. The mountain that had seemed like a simple observation post was about to become the place where Sarah Chin's carefully maintained facade would shatter under pressure that demanded everything she possessed, including skills she had spent years learning to hide from the very people whose lives might depend on her willingness to use them. Between operator and support personnel can get blurry fast. Your job is communications, but your responsibility is to the team. If a situation develops where we need you to do something outside your normal duties, I need to know you can handle it. Sarah met his gaze while choosing her words carefully. I understand, sir. I'll do whatever the mission requires. Morrison nodded, satisfied with her response, but clearly aware that deployment would test every team member in ways that training couldn't replicate. Good, because where we're going, there might not be time to ease into situations. Everything happens fast, and people who can't keep up don't come home. The conversation marked a turning point in Sarah's relationship with Team 7. They had accepted her as a capable professional who could be trusted with increasingly sensitive responsibilities. What they didn't know was that they were about to deploy with someone whose hidden abilities would soon prove invaluable in ways that would challenge everything they thought they understood about their new communications specialist. As their plane lifted off from Coronado bound for Afghanistan, Sarah looked back at the base where she had spent months carefully maintaining a facade that was about to be tested under the most extreme conditions imaginable. She carried May's leather pouch in her pocket, advanced communication equipment in her pack, and skills that would soon be revealed in a way that would change everything for Team 7. Afghanistan was waiting with challenges that would strip away pretense and reveal the truth about who Sarah Chun really was beneath the carefully constructed identity she had maintained throughout her military career. The girl who had learned to shoot behind a Montana barn was about to become the woman who would save her teammates with abilities they never knew she possessed. 3 days later, Sarah reported to Coronado carrying everything she owned in 2 duffel bags and a carefully guarded secret that would soon be tested in ways she couldn't imagine. She had successfully navigated the military's training pipeline while concealing abilities that could change her role from support personnel to primary operator. As her taxi approached the naval base, Sarah could see teams of SEALs conducting training exercises on the beach. They moved with the fluid precision of individuals whose lives depended on perfect coordination and absolute trust in each other's capabilities. She was about to join that world while hiding skills that could make her one of its most valuable assets. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had worked so hard to appear ordinary that she had successfully convinced everyone, including herself at times, that ordinary was what she actually was. But May's training and her own natural abilities were about to be tested in an environment where ordinary people didn't survive long enough to prove themselves extraordinary. Sarah Chun was walking into a world where her carefully maintained facade would soon become impossible to sustain, where life and death situations would demand every skill she possessed, and where the difference between 18 minutes of perfect shooting and mission failure could determine whether her teammates came home alive. She had no way of knowing that in just 18 months, she would find herself alone on a rooftop in Afghanistan with a borrowed rifle, 10 targets in her sights, and exactly 18 minutes to prove that some secrets are too important to keep hidden any longer. May finally spoke about her own past. She described nights spent behind enemy lines, targets that were human beings with families and dreams, and the particular loneliness that came with being a woman carrying deadly secrets in a world that underestimated her. "The hardest shot is the one that saves lives," May said as they packed up the rifles. "The easiest shot is the one that ends them. Never confuse the two." Sarah enrolled in the military communications program 3 months later, driven by a combination of practical considerations and growing conviction that her abilities demanded something more than a quiet civilian life. She told herself she would serve her term, gain valuable experience, and return to Montana to build a normal life. She had no way of knowing that normal was no longer an option, that the skills May had taught her would eventually place her in situations where 18 minutes could change the course of a mission, or that her careful facade of ordinariness would one day shatter in front of the most elite soldiers in the American military. As her bus pulled away from the ranch for basic training, Sarah caught a glimpse of May watching from the kitchen window. The old woman raised her hand in what looked like a goodbye wave, but felt more like a salute between warriors who understood that some gifts could never be returned to their boxes. Sarah Chun was heading toward a destiny she couldn't imagine, carrying skills that would soon prove invaluable in ways her quiet Montana upbringing had never prepared her to understand. The girl who had learned to be invisible was about to discover that some abilities are too powerful to remain hidden forever.